Hey Andrew, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
There he is. How are you doing, Andrew?
Good, how you doing, buddy?
What in the world?
Is my audio on? I can never tell which system I've got going. Doesn't look like it.
Are you hearing?
I'm hearing, but I don't know that you're
Yeah, I'm
hearing
not
me.
hearing you though.
Yeah.
Kevin's just joining. Hello, Kevin.
Hey there, Brian.
How you doing?
All right. How are you?
I'm okay. Andrew's here. He's working on an audio issue, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure you two can hear me. Is this one any better?
Yep, got you now.
Okay.
I got a quick question for
You're
you,
a little
Brian.
quiet, Andrew, but I can hear something. Go ahead, Kevin.
I went on the Devlin Peck to learn the xAPI, and when I did it, like I thought I did everything right, and then I put it on Veracity. I copied it from the storyline file, but it won't give me a statement. And I know, like, if you're off by one or two things, it won't give you a statement. I
Yeah.
just can't figure out what I'm doing wrong. Is there anywhere you can go, like you can put it in and it could actually read it to see if it's off somewhere, like instead of you yourself having to figure it out?
What I've been told to do. Let me see if I can pull this off here. So I'm going to switch to sharing. See if I can give you some visual feedback on the fly here.
Okay.
We'll see if I can make this
All right.
work.
All right.
So what browser are you using?
I'm using Chrome.
Okay.
And I tested it in Veracity to get a statement in Veracity, but it's not giving me a statement.
Right. So I am in Brave, which is, as I understand it, nearly a clone of Chrome. There's some tricky things Chrome is doing on the Mac right now to where people are saying avoid the Google version. This version does not have that issue. So if you're not using a Mac, it's not a concern.
What are you in?
If you're not using a Mac as your operating system,
okay,
it's not a concern for you. But on the Mac, if you're using Chrome, there are some issues with the helper files it uses taking over a lot of CPU time.
Well, I don't use Mac. I got a Windows.
Then don't worry about it. I'm just using something similar to Chrome called Brave.
Brave?
Yeah, B-R-A-V-E, Brave. And what they're saying you should do in order to debug is, again, I'm not certain what the steps are in Chrome. You may need to go into preferences and open up like a developer mode. So I'd show you how I can do it, but
okay.
It's about the same. It's like Control U, I think, if you're on PC.
Andrew, do you
Control U? Are you on a PC, Andrew?
Yeah. Do you want to show him? Are you on a PC?
I can open up a VM. Mac is my main operating system.
But the point is,
okay. So you
go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Go to preferences then, right?
I wanted to check that. I wanted to make sure. I want to go to edit, I think, and see if I can see.
It looks like for Chrome, you're going to want to go to the View drop-down menu. You should have a developer option
I see.
and developer tools. So the Mac keyboard shortcut is Command-Option-I, so that would be Alt-Control-I on PC.
Alt-Control-I. Okay.
And then what I'm doing here is I'm effectively right-clicking. It's called Option Click on the Mac. Okay. And I'm selecting an element with the mouse and then dragging down to inspect.
You should be able to do that on Chrome as well for PC.
Okay.
And what this does is it opens up like a developer window over here.
Okay.
But it also shows you the element that is, under that was under the mouse. So I'm literally inspecting this blue element, and when I mouse over the code, it highlights what I'm inspecting. You see it moving around, hopefully.
Okay. Okay.
So the point of this view is, if you go into console, you can actually get some feedback on what's happening. So like this message happened before. I'm not sure what caused it, but I can close that one out. No, I guess I can't. I'm going to click blue and try and send a statement, and you can see I'm getting JavaScript feedback here from my page showing that I've simulated a button click by clicking the letter D. And don't worry about the right black button. I'm not using that input device right now. But the point is once I click OK, it's sending the jQuery, it's sending the statement. And then I'm seeing feedback here in the console about that interaction. And this will give you some errors to look at to help debug what your issue may be.
So like when I put it in Veracity, is that, and then I send it for the statement, would I do that for that process, or?
So this process is to help you find if you're not getting any statements sent to Veracity. It's
not showing. Yes.
This process is to help you find what's happening in your browser if you're not getting any statements sent to Veracity.
Okay, I don't want to seem stupid here, but I just want to understand the process. Like, so if I have the JSON, so I have the xAPI I wrote, or the JavaScript code, and then I took it and then I put it in Veracity. So I'm on that site. Would I be doing that off as the Veracity site to check the console during that?
Well, help me understand how you published your JavaScript
well, what
code.
You do is you take, from what maybe I'm doing it wrong. Like I thought, I followed the steps that he had, and then it said in storyline. So you're taking a storyline.
Oh, okay.
And you're trying to get a xAPI statement for storyline. So you have to copy the storyline and put it in the xAPI.
Right.
So you put it all in there, and then you take that, and then from what I gather, from the process that I was following, I mean, I could send you his link that tells you exactly what to do. It's step by step. And then I put it in Veracity, and it should have given me a statement. But it didn't. And then there were people who said, well, you were a space off, or you were missing that there. And I thought I fixed everything. It looks identical to his statement. But it's just not.
Yeah, it's sort of a challenge to try and debug what he's doing, because he is embedding JavaScript inside a storyline file that needs to be hosted on another server.
Yeah.
And once you cycle back and reminded me of that, I'm struggling to understand how to debug that, because I've tried to follow his tutorials.
Right.
But the challenge is the storyline is Windows only. Although they claim they'll run on a Mac, they're actually basically saying you have to run it in emulation or VMware or Fusion or something like that. And I haven't really got to the point where I can do that yet. So
maybe Izzy knows some of that stuff. I even sent the thing to Izzy.
Yeah, he
told me what to look for. I made all the fixes.
Yeah,
I did it twice, so I'm wondering. I mean, it's just one sheet. It's one of basic code.
I understand.
So it's not.
I don't like turning you away, but the challenge is the intricacy of what Devlin is doing within Storyline makes it a little more complex, and I has a little could be in air quotes there. It makes it more complex. So
is that right?
Yeah, because like you said, I'm not sure where you're hosting your Storyline file.
Okay.
Are you uploading that into Veracity or something like Squirm Cloud? Because
maybe that's the problem. I just
Storyline file, as I understand it,
I'll try hosting it again. Like I could AWS, make a host in AWS, so I could take it off of that one.
Yeah, the Storyline file.
I'll try it again.
And are you able to see the content as a learner?
No.
And take the course. So you've got the challenge of you're not publishing and seeing your file yet. So you need to be able to go through that level of
okay.
Of
I think I might know. Maybe I didn't publish it right in AWS, so I could see about whether I published it.
So let me make an analogy
like that. But I don't want to take up too much of our time here. I just
I was just going to transition.
I'll look into it again, and I'll hopefully this week I'll get it fixed.
Okay. So, as an analogy, this content that I'm showing here is hosted on my duckworks.biz website. It is not produced by Captivate or Storyline. It is HTML that I'm editing. And if I go over here and look at the elements, I'm actually seeing that code, that HTML code.
Right.
And like I mentioned earlier, there are a couple people have joined in. I'm in this inspection mode on the right where I can highlight and see the elements that I'm looking at.
Yeah.
And you can sort of digest if you twirl down the script entry here, you can digest some of the JavaScript.
Right.
But in full disclosure, I need to say this was an example I pulled off one of the courses that I've completed, and it's not, the code, the JavaScript, and a lot of the code back here is not original to me.
Okay.
Most of what you're seeing, someone has done a lot of that legwork, and we're building on each other, and that's part of the cohort. Is we're not trying to build these things from scratch. We're trying to learn how they interact with each other and see how we can get content doing what we want it to do.
And to get the things from GitHub as well, right?
Yes.
Code to GitHub.
So.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna figure it out.
Yeah.
It's probably something simple. And I'm forgetting something simple, or maybe I didn't put a certain.
I think the first place to start is validate that you're hosting the Storyline file on a web server in a way that a learner can complete it, and that would validate that the content is visible before you worry about are you getting statements sent.
Okay.
That's sort of the first step. So welcome, everybody. We just sort of dove into a troubleshooting issue because there was some time. A couple people came in early. A couple people have joined. So we're just in the middle of that, and that's sort of where we're at. If I can pull us back a little bit, we've talked about, in the past, we've had meetings and talk about projects, and I sort of wanted to get back to that discussion. I put together an agenda and sent that out via email as well as in Slack. So I wanted to make sure you're aware of where we're at with that. And I'm not seeing it on my screen. So let me reach over and find that. regular meeting. So here's what I've mentioned about the agenda. Open items last week or new items. We talked about some of the projects for part 2. I want to continue that discussion or dive in a little further. I also want to take a look at what we think we need for that intro to LiveCode session and talk about when we might hold that. And always we have goals for our team that could be discussed. If somebody brings something new or wants to revisit them, we're welcome to do that. And then updates on projects underway. So welcome to the meeting. I know we're sort of in the middle of it, but let me just say that. And does anybody have any open items from last week, or do we want to bring up anything new? Okay, first item, does everybody have a working microphone? Nobody wants to talk. So we need to break that barrier. So let me take you through what we discussed last week a little bit. And this is just my notes, and it's meant to be a recap of that discussion. Again, this is what I put into Slack and is prompting for somebody who may not have attended. So there's more detail that I sort of summarize this. If we were talking about, say, a 3 to 5 minute lesson, what would you want to measure? What content you want to deliver? Helen mentioned that she'd want to see like an ecosystem kind of approach with videos and a PDF. And then Peter has mentioned he's curated YouTube videos in the browser outside of LiveCode. So he's looking for options. And Peter, you correct me if I'm not paraphrasing this correctly. He's looking for options for working within LiveCode using the browser widget, wants details on how to interact with YouTube via the JavaScript API, and manage URLs to show parts, in other words, queuing a YouTube video. So if you have a 30-minute video, we want to be able to say, here's a 20, 45-second segment of that video, rather than blocking off the whole 45 minutes. And I think that's sort of key. Peter, is
that's right?
That's okay. I didn't capture who mentioned it, but somebody mentioned the idea of using Kaltura and Neuro. Joan, was that you? Might have been Helen? Okay, shaking her head. So again, that's still a question mark. I captured that Joan mentioned a recreation of the xAPI bookmarklet on a mobile phone, and that was as a LiveCode project. And she's looking to add the ability to use mobile offline and then send data to an LRS. And that's a layer of complication, because basically you're having to capture that data locally in LiveCode, say either within an array or within a database structure. And then you have to validate, am I on the internet? Am I within service? Then start sending those statements after you get back into service. So that is definitely some more advanced things.
Yeah, I was hoping it was just a checkbox in LiveCode. Store offline and reconnect, but apparently not.
So, that actually helps. So I'm thinking you mean manually select a checkbox.
No, I was trying to make a joke. I was hoping in LiveCode, the storing offline would just be automatic and it wouldn't be That's what I was saying.
I mean, if you added that in, to me, that would make it less of a challenge to try and program it for our group.
Yeah,
because so then you're saying, I know I'm offline. Let me click the checkbox and say, okay, put it in the database. Now I know I'm back in the area. Let me deselect and have the app say, okay, it's time to push everything up.
Yeah, that can be
like an interim option.
Yeah. Thank you.
and I'll just capture it as I think you're seeing my typing. Manually select a checkbox to identify when offline and online.
So, just if I can.
Go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that's doable. There's just two things you have to do. One is save the data, and there's I haven't done it on a mobile project, but I'm sure you could just save it in a
save documents.
Wow.
You save it as a document. Save it as people use like an SQL kind of a file to save stuff. However you want to save it, and then you can. There's probably a message. Like I know on desktop, you just ask, look for a common website to see if it's on, if you can get it, like google.com, although that's probably not don't want to give them too much press and links, but you just check, and if they're not responding, you're offline. If they're responding, okay, or your own server. You have your own server, your LRS. You ping your LRS, nothing there. Okay, I'm going to try again in 10 minutes. Ping an LRS. That would be sort of a more, or when you start it up, it would do that. There's ways to do it. It's not as simple as a checkbox, but it's just a little bit of making your own little routine. And the nice thing is you ask these questions online, and there's a good chance someone's already done it or can give you the hint of what it is you need to do. So I don't think it's impossible to do that.
Okay, I appreciate it. So any other thoughts on that, Joan? Do you want to elaborate it further?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
The next thing down, I think I typed in, the idea of using native LiveCode UI tools and building either quiz questions or interactions would probably be a better way to put that, because there are sliders, there are widgets, there are things that we can interact with, and the idea is that becomes part of using the native UI of LiveCode. And that leads us in the idea of what is in an introduction to LiveCode. For this group, what I did was I took some of the discussion points we had just up above, and I said, it sounds to me like for an introduction to LiveCode, again, for this group, a session or sessions, meaning an hour or two or a few hours, after the baseline is complete, we can show examples of how to publish content in LiveCode, examples of capturing interactions from buttons, sliders, other objects, providing them as recordings in GitHub. So the topics that I captured are user interaction with native elements, meaning buttons, fields, a scroll bar, tabs, a video object. Anything else we should have listed here? Andrew, Martin?
I was just thinking, as we're thinking of, say, Joan's project, or there was two of them. Anyways, we should just pick out what elements are necessary. There's the video one and the bookmarklet.
Yeah.
And we just need to pick out which elements are needed for that, so that people can learn how to make their own, to make those projects that we're making. So we should really focus on those types of things, right? So things like I just said, or the different buttons and widgets or whatever you're going to use for like the player. So have a bit on the player, have a bit on
Helen's interested in the PDF. Did we?
Yeah.
I think it was Martin. Did you say there were issues in trying to display a PDF within the web browser?
I did a sample for a PDF that was online. That was just a sample one, and it would instantly crash LiveCode. And so I don't know if it was a problem with that PDF.
I've got a proof of concept we can take a look at.
Okay, oh good, yeah.
You want to do that now?
We can. Actually, it could be used as a very basic LiveCode intro if we wanted to. I could basically recreate what I did with it. If it would take probably 5 minutes longer, it would probably take 10 minutes to go through instead of 5. But if
I'm fine with that. Yeah. So apparently I've missed a couple of dialogues. Let me go into advanced sharing and
sorry about
make sure you can share.
Edges on my background. I can't get my thing, you know.
Are you updating?
I'm getting a new one. I need a nice wide one, and I'm ordering it, but I thought I was ordering from a local company, and then I got a thing that's being shipped from China, so I'm waiting for it to come. So much for shop local.
It wouldn't be funny if it hadn't happened to me. But yes.
Okay, let's see here. So what we had discussed was, at least sort of what I had in my notes, was a basic sort of a viewer type. So, you know, looking at a PDF, that sort of thing, which made me think about the browser widget. So in the LiveCode tool panel, grabbing this little globe icon represents the browser widget. I've used the browser widget before to display PDFs. We can also use it for other file types. So with the browser widget, basically whatever we tell it to use as a URL is what's going to be displayed here. So if that's a web page, then it's going to display a web page. If it's just a PDF or whatever, it should display that. So there's the first start. It's getting a browser widget out there. Also thought that we would need a list field. So I'm going to grab this scrolling field because we're going to have several items. You know, whether this is saved to the documents for my proof of concept, I just did it as stuff that was in a junk folder on my desktop. So this list or this field will have several items that we'll be able to go through and display in the browser. So just a little simple button to do some interaction. Everything in LiveCode is scriptable. So on this button, I'm going to set it up to go out and basically just go out and look for stuff in a junk folder on my desktop. So let me move this. Fortunately, the version of LiveCode I have is a bunk one right now that's not color coding things properly, but a simple handler on this button, so on mouse up. So after you've pushed down on it and when you let go, that is going to be the up. I'm going to put the special folder path. So this is going to get, in this case, I'm going to get the special folder path for resources. This is going to get the location of this stack, this LiveCode project. So I'm going to look for this because I'm going to store this in my junk folder as well. I'm going to look for stuff that's in that path. So I'm going to get that special path and put it into just a variable called tpath. So I'll set up a breakpoint to take a look at how this would work. Actually, I'm going to need to save this first before it will show up anywhere. Just save it out to this junk folder. Okay, so now when I click on this, my script is going to stop right at that breakpoint so I can go line by line through. And I'm going to get the special folder path of resources, so where this object is, and it's basically right there on my desktop. So now that I know where this is, I want to get everything from that path. So I'm going to put the files of tpath into another variable, and let's call it tfolders. So again, just to slow and walk through this, it's going to get our current location, then it's going to go and get all of the files that are in that path. So this has given us a nice big list of documents. And I'm going to take these documents and I'm going to put them into this text field. So we'll add one more line of code here. We'll put the variable tfolders into the field, and that was just, I'm sure it was probably just called field because I didn't take the time to name it. So when I push this button, it's going to look and see where we're at. It's going to get the list of all the files from there, and then it's going to put them into that field. So this gives us something to actually populate the browser with. I'm going to add a little bit of scripting to this. So on this particular field, on mouse down, when we click on this particular field, we're going to put the click line. So the click line will be what line we're actually clicking on. So if we know what line we're clicking on, we'll know what information is there because we're going to inevitably load that file on. So I'm going to put line, and this will make sense in just a second when we look at the code. I'm going to put line word 2 of the click line, me into t file name. So again, with LiveCode, I'm going to insert a breakpoint here so we can take the step by step. And when I click on a particular line, now when I'm clicking, it's letting me select, because I forgot, I need to make this a locked field, otherwise it's going to assume we're trying to select stuff in here. I need to lock that text. There we go. So when I click on that line, it's going to tell me that I clicked on line.
Let's see the variables.
Can't see the variables?
Yeah, your tools are hiding your variables, just so that people can see. Well, the value.
Huh. Yeah, there's no values.
Okay. So actually, now I remember why there's no value here. So this is a more advanced programming thing. I should not have put the breakpoint where I put the breakpoint. I put the breakpoint before the line of code that looked to see where I was clicking. And so I had already clicked, so I was clicking in a different place. So I actually need to put this after. I'm getting a really weird. Yeah, I'm getting a really weird screen share. Let me stop for just 1 second and share this again and see.
I wasn't sure if you were seeing it.
It started on me as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try this one more time here. So we'll click a couple lines down here. And so it's telling me that I've clicked on line 7 of field 1. So I actually want the number 7 because I'm going to put line word 2 of the click line. So word 2, LiveCode naturally knows this chunk is 7. I'm going to put line 7 into the file name. Looks like I'm missing something here. Oh, and I'm flickering again. Let me see why that's flickering here. Sorry about that. I got a new monitor, and LiveCode is not liking my second monitor setup.
Yeah, I've sort of had some trouble with that. On a larger monitor, LiveCode wants to put the menu towards the middle left, lower left.
Well, I've found I can't put my monitor above. I can't arrange my monitor above the main monitor. It can be to the side, below, to the right, to the left. But if you put it above, it it can't figure out the geometry.
And my share is locked up. So, Brian, can you unshare me as an admin? I think I'm going to have to change the configuration. There we go.
So it's a good time to mention we've got 5 minutes left in this Zoom meeting. I just put another URL in the chat. While Andrew is troubleshooting, we can have you go grab that URL and get ready to transition to a new meeting. It's also a good chance to be able to welcome Helen. She joined the meeting just as Andrew was starting.
Well, let's see if I can just soldier through with some of the predefined code that I already had set up from earlier. So what we end up having programmed here is on mouse down on this list, we're going to get whatever line we've clicked on. We're going to get that text because that text represents a file name. We're going to go back out to that path that we were looking at. We're going to append this file name to that path because it already had the folder path that we were looking for. We just need to go one level further with the file name on that. We're going to set the URL of the widget. So that is this fancy little property where if I put in a web address, the URL will be HTTP or whatever. If I put in a local, it'll be file. So I can use this locally or remotely. So I'm going to put the URL of whatever that file path is into the browser. Then I have some other code here that's just looking to see how many lines there are in this field. And it's going to basically make all the background white except for the line that I just clicked, just to have a little bit of a visual indicator there. So what this is showing, though, is that I can, as we run out of time here, I can click on well, if Zoom didn't lock me up again, I can finish this up in the start of the next session if we would like. But if I click on the individual lines here, and again, this is predetermined files that were just junk on a folder. If I click on these, it will take whatever that is and load that up into the browser widget. This seemed to work okay with any WebSafe documents, so JPEGs, PNGs, even movie files. It would automatically just do it's kind of like a player. It would work with most PDFs. I didn't get it to work with all, and I wasn't sure if it was just because where the sources were. I mean, some of them were created from the print dialog, some of them were probably actual pre-pressed documents, but was able to, Zoom's not really showing my clicks here, was able to go through and basically any one of these that I would click could kind of keep track of what had been viewed and see it. What I was able to determine was I didn't have a lot of control with just loading the documents, as far as I couldn't necessarily scroll a PDF to page 3 of 4, just with the native PDF. There are some additional things that we can do if we wrap that PDF in an HTML page with JavaScript and still load that in. We can do it locally, but once we have the JavaScript, we've got all sorts of different handlers and stuff we can do. Don't have that option if we're getting stuff fed from some web source. Also don't have that option if we're doing something like the YouTube route that Peter's talking about, because we can't extra wrap that content. That content's already wrapped in some manner. So, but PDFs seem to load fine for the most part. It's not 100% fail-safe, but if you had the ability to stream your material ahead of time, I don't see there would be any problem with it.
Okay, we've got less than a minute, so if you haven't already, jump into the chat, grab the URL for the next one, and go ahead and log off, and I will start the next meeting and see you in a moment. Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate you doing that demo, and appreciate you taking the time to code that up. So Martin, Helen, thanks for joining in again. Kevin? Kevin, I think you can hear. Martin still needs to connect audio. Helen, hopefully you're there.
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. Good afternoon.
Yes, welcome. Thanks for putting those files together. I'm thinking we'll use those as part of the demo. Got a video and a PDF we can load up. So here's
Excellent.
Andrew coming back in. And
Okay, I just saw those. The Compliance Learning Solution MP4. Is that what you're talking about?
Yep. So if you look in Slack, Helen loaded in a use case Word doc, Compliance Learning Solution MP4, and policy sample with form fields PDF. So those, I was thinking we might publish those onto a web server and start using them as examples for us.
Yeah.
And then Andrew, you mentioned the idea of wrapping them in like a JavaScript wrapper. Is there an example you can point me to for that? And I can.
I was trying to find, I think it was Herman that had been doing most of the JavaScript widget stuff. Trying to find some examples of that. I don't know a lot of JavaScript. I know that seems to be the key to success with expanding the browser widget in LiveCode to do stuff kind of beyond its sort of standard capabilities is to do JavaScript calls with it. I'll see if I can find something on the user list for that, but I do not have an example myself.
I mean, I can research it if you don't find anything. I just thought, since you mentioned it, you might have something you'd seen. Yeah, I think you actually had logged out fairly quickly, so thanks for putting that demo together and showing us your example. I'm moving things around here. I'm going to start the share and shift back into the agenda. Is everyone seeing this now?
Yes.
Yes.
Actually, Andrew, is that stack something we could share?
Yeah, it's a binary stack, so I don't know how to get it on GitHub, and apparently I don't have my GitHub set up right anyway, because I'm still not showing up on the xAPI list page. But
yeah, if you just compress
I'll post it up into Slack.
Oh, you could do that too. Compress it and put it in Slack, and I'll get it up in the GitHub. Because I'm sort of curious how it handles CSV and some of the other file formats you had in there. Of course, I'll have to.
It treats most of the stuff like text. I was in my test case, I was loading up JSON, TXT, CSV. They all sort of display like plain text.
Okay, so.
And just to say,
Go ahead, Mark.
About Andrew's idea with using the text list. So anytime the user clicked, that could be something that generated a statement. So if they clicked on this JPEG, then they could say clicked on this image, that image, and that's.
You can create a paper trail of how long they spent, so not necessarily active engagement, but you could find out time between clicks or even possibly time between scroll, which might give you an idea. I know when I'm looking at server logs, that's one way I kind of keep an eye out if something's real or if it's some fake traffic, is kind of seeing the time between each sort of movement. Gives you a real good idea if it's, someone's just stagnant, if something's automated, or if they're actively engaged.
Yeah, and the other tool I was working on, I actually did some work to send JavaScript to the browser widget to tell it to scroll to a certain height and width and could manipulate it. But one of the things I ran into was there was existing code in the example that supposedly was sending back the location. So if I manually scrolled, it was supposed to send back to LiveCode how far I'd scrolled. And I was presuming that if it would do that, which I couldn't get it to do, but if it would do that, I could capture, well, when did they scroll and how far? And that might give us some insight as to, if they scrolled 1,200 pixels, I think you can do some kind of math and say, is that a page? And get an estimate of how many pages they viewed. If you've got a 5-page PDF, scrolling a certain number of pixels would tell you if they tried to view it all. So
research I found when looking at this was that you could send JavaScript to the browser widget, even if it wasn't a page that you necessarily owned. But if you did own the content yourself, it was much easier to put the JavaScript handlers in the HTML page itself, right, which, again, you could do with the browser widget as local. But if you could just call those handlers from the into the browser widget rather than trying to talk back and forth, you just trigger directly from the web page. So that seemed to be an easier, probably more powerful way to go.
The one thing, and I haven't done this before, but the browser widget can have JavaScript handlers which you add to it, right? And so you can set the JavaScript handlers of the widget to, and you have a list of handlers. And so there's a way that you could use your own handlers that you do. And I think you can also return data from that. I don't know enough about JavaScript to do it myself, but it just seemed like an interesting way. Have you tried that?
That was the same stuff that I saw. It's not something that I have tried myself, but have seen that there does seem to be some documentation to support that working. But I don't know enough about JavaScript to really get too deep into the weeds on that one.
And that is what I'm sort of working to learn. That app that I had shown had exactly that code in it, where it was defining a JavaScript handler and then interacting with that between LiveCode and the web page via JavaScript. But some of the predefined ones that I copied and pasted were supposedly capturing the scroll. I think it was the HLock and VLock, or I'm not sure exactly what term it was using, but it was supposedly capturing the position of the page within the browser, and that data was being sent back, or I thought was being sent back to LiveCode, but when I tried to display it in some text fields, I couldn't get any values to enter the text fields. So nor did I, when I set breakpoints, did I see it as variables. So I think it was working within the browser widget, but somehow the JavaScript wasn't. It may have been because it was encapsulated in a function, and the function was complete and not sending the data back, wasn't sending it back as a value or parameter. I'm not sure the terminology there. So there was a little more research for me to do to make sure that was working.
And just one workaround that came to mind, if you were creating the PDF yourself, I don't know how this would work, but if you put links within the PDF, and part of the activity was the person had to scroll and then click a link, it would either go fetch that and display it in the browser, or LiveCode would get that and then it would have to display it in the browser. I'm not sure which way it would work. but both of those would create some sort of message that you could track. So if you designed your thing so it went from, a PDF that had so many different links in it, and I'm not on video, so all this gesturing is useless. Oh, I am on video. Okay. Anyways, if you have 5 links on it, and you clicked on one and it brings up a page and they have to view it, and then they click back, and then second link, third link, fourth link, fifth link. Instead of trying to track the scrolling, you could have ways that each element in that would generate something that, okay, they went to this page, they spent 2 minutes on that page and they went back. They went to that page, they went back, and then they skipped the next 2 pages, didn't even bother to hit the last page. Or they clicked on all the links all within 10 seconds, so obviously really didn't engage with the information. Right? So that could be workarounds if the scrolling. But I think, like you said, that could likely be done with the JavaScript handlers and setting the text of it. I know you can send JavaScript to it, and then the handlers can get it stuff back. There's a return value that sends it back out to LiveCode. So it's conceivable it can be done that way. So.
Or Martin, you could send a callback or a send in time to check the URL of the browser, and then if it's different than what in your basic document, then they've clicked on that URL. So you don't have to do anything with JavaScript in that sense.
Yeah.
I've also tried setting the JavaScript handlers and all that, and I got hardly any place with that. It's very difficult, unless you kind of know what's going on with the whole thing. It'd be good if LiveCode, someone had a lesson or something how to interact with the web page, with the JavaScript in the browser widget. That'd be great. Someone did that.
Yeah.
Haven't found it yet.
Cool.
Any other discussion we want to have about projects and technologies?
I'm looking at the next one, the goals for the team and building the learning record provider in LiveCode.
Yep.
So I was working on that a little bit. I didn't get as far as I want, but I can show you what I got so far.
Okay. Let's take a look at Martin. So I'm going to stop share, and I need to enable sharing for you, Martin, because it's a new session.
Just going to make sure I've got LiveCode where I want LiveCode.
So you should be able to share now.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm not sharing all my junky food. Okay, so things are a little bit. Excuse me. So this one, people had mentioned don't know why I took a picture of the screen. Share screen. I'm not sure that's good. Okay. So I've just put some of the links I used when I was researching all of this. And one was, people mentioned this tutorial by Devlin Peck.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking for a browser window.
Yeah, Kevin was actually looking at one of his tutorials earlier.
Yeah, I did that one.
Yeah, so I was basically going through this.
Yeah, I did that one.
Yeah, and looking for how he actually sent out the object. Right, so he's creating the object, the actor, the verb, and everything like that. And then we got into the JavaScript. Sorry for this flying text here. That's his whole statement, and then the result. So extensions, and it's really good. It really helped me to understand all, where extensions go. Yeah, there's this full statement, which can be very complex. So here he gets into the setting the JavaScript and setting the statement. So he uses basic auth, base 264 encoding with this BTOA. He has the key and the secret, and the key is like your username and the secret is your password. Uses post, has the header set, the content type, and the authorization. And so I was just basically looking at, and then he turns it into a string, like from JSON to string. And this is where he uses the fetch command. So basically, I don't know enough JavaScript to be able to write it, but I could read it and get an idea of what he was doing. So then what I did was wrote it to LiveCode. And I started to put all of this stuff together. So I was using trying to use GrassBlade LRS, which we talked about before, because one of the reasons was they're offering a deal to people. The other is the person who's behind that is behind the video profile for xAPI. So if you go there, they have a demo server that you can just post stuff to and try out. And there's just a username and a password for the API. So I put these into these two fields. And then I just added some basic fields for the actor, the full name for the actor, and then a brief sort of shortcut name, and then a verb, and the verb UI, and the object, and the object, or object URI, and the object. So I was just sort of, from his tutorial, I was sort of putting the basic stuff. So this at the bottom is just the JavaScript statement, and the stuff above is how information needed to send it. And I'm just going to, so I just created a button and added the script. And right now it's just basic. I didn't get it to the point where it actually sends the statement, but I'll show you what I would do if I had it. So I'm doing the mouse up, just like Brian was saying. It's gone, I'll go stop. Okay. Not Brian, Andrew was doing that, and he puts in breakpoint. There's another way you can do a breakpoint is you just click beside, but they're not dependable. Sometimes they don't really work, but putting the text right in, but I'm just doing that quickly. So I'm going to hit mouse up. So now I named all of my fields, and so it just takes the value in the field and sticks it into the variable that I'm setting up. Which of course you can't see because I'm just standing here and it's on a whole different screen. So I'll do that again. Okay. So here I've got mouse up, I've clicked, here's these red dots that you can click and not click, unclick. And there's all of my variables that are set up at the bottom here. So as it goes through, it just pulls all of that data into here and sets it up as variables. And right now I'm not using those at the moment. Then I get a command, set xAPI request headers. So this is where I get the login information set. So it jumps down to that command. And so this is what I did using that tutorial. So he's basically, the basic is the type of encoding, and then I base64 encode the user and the password, which right now I realize I didn't pass as variables, so they're just empty. And then that goes to the authorization gate. Next step, it cuts together that whole HTTPS header. So it cuts the application type, the content type, and the authorization. So if I go through that, I've got, if I double click on this, as Andy was doing, you get what's in that variable. So it just says accept application/JSON. For some reason, I've got some other stuff here that I added in, but I need to get rid of. Then the authorization. So this is just created the header. Once that was created, then it goes to create the xAPI statement, and then that would use those other variables that I have, the verb, the whatever. So those would be put into array. So I was just getting this started, and I haven't had time to really work on it. But the basic idea with this is you could send a JSON, or send an xAPI statement, which is a JSON, straight to an LRS, and it would register. And the nice thing about this is you can watch your statements go in, which is, like, I think Veracity did that too. So you sign up, and it just shows your IP address. So you just look at what your IP address is, and you can see them filing along. So then you could just keep using this to say, okay, now I want to keep following Devlin's thing. And okay, I've got verb actor object. Now I want to put all of these other extensions and other data, and make sure they continue to be consistent with how the LRS is expecting them. And you could just sort of build it slowly that way. So that's why I think my intention of doing this is just to prove that we can actually just use LiveCode, a LiveCode app, whether it be mobile or desktop, to send the statements as a provider. So I'm going to continue to work on this. I won't try and do it live here. That's crazy making. But I'll just stop here. But this is just to show the proof of concept that all of the elements are there. It should work. I will endeavor to do more towards this. But then, last thing I was going to say, everything that's in this button, I would then make a little library, so that library would be the xAPI connection library or something. And then you would just add that into the mobile one for the bookmarklet, or we would add it into the other one, which is navigating PDFs or videos. So this is sort of the base part of the, or a foundational part of the application that others can build on. So that's all I have to say. I feel like I'm on show and tell. This whole video thing just unnerves me to no end. So I will stop now. And I just have to figure out how to unshare. I don't see my little Slack control. Oh, there it is. Came up. Stop share. There.
Yeah, don't worry about being self-conscious when you're on the sharing. Everybody sort of goes through that, Martin. We appreciate what you're doing. It looks good from my perspective. I'd like to see the progress on it. So
yeah. I was just hoping to get it done today, but I've been just other things started coming up, and I didn't have time to work on it. So that's as far as I got.
Yep, I understand. And part of you sort of jumped us into the next section. Let me go back to sharing here. Hopefully you're seeing me scrolling. So part of what we talked about for projects underway, Martin, I had you down as your project with Levure, but this sounds to me like it's a separate effort. I wonder if we shouldn't capture that. And it's...
Yeah, so the
glass blade?
Well, the Levure part of it is there. So this would become a library. So the Levure would be for a desktop app, right? And you would add this as, once this is, like this is just being done with a one stack, single stack to make it easy to just sort of play around with. And then once it was working correctly, and then that code got made into a library, then that library could go into the Levure part. And if you're doing a mobile app, you can't, like Levure isn't for that. So you would just take that same library and add it in however mobile apps use libraries. So it's sort of, yeah, I guess it is slightly separate, but it's creating it's just working on the actual library to be an LRS provider. So that's, right. If you want to capture it as anything, it's just the LRS provider library.
Okay. So that's what I'm calling it, learning record provider. But I guess the distinction I wanted to make is separate from, it's a new instance separate from what we already have in GitHub with that live code with Levure. So it sounds to me like it's going to have its own area.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
And then I'm sort of taking the same tact. The one that I had started to create with the xAPI lab, I sort of found their coding to be very complex and challenging for my skill level. So I've sort of put that one on hold, and some of this was based on Martin's feedback after the last meeting. We went in and looked at some of the details, and I said, you know, it makes sense for me to go back in and look at what I had done with Makey. And I have a window open here that I can show as a very rapid work in progress. Are you seeing me drag this over, I hope?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is based on that code that I had built for Makey. And one of the keys down here is I have Json Visualizer embedded in, it's another JavaScript library, but it's embedded in the HTML page. And the idea is that by using that visualizer and feeding it a skeleton, I would call it, JSON file, I'm just saying it's ready, not submitted yet. So you can see that initially there's some values in the JSON. And right now there's no user interface elements, so I'm going to click a letter and we get the message saying I've selected the D key. And when I click OK, that JSON is updated as a response from the statement being sent to the LRS. And one of the initial things you see is that there have been an object, a result, and context added, and that an ID has been added. So if we twirl these down, we can see that there's quite a bit of detail that has filled in based on the statement that was sent. And I'm not trying to funnel us into a discussion of context or different elements, but the point is on this page, you're able to see that immediately that the statement has been sent and what the response is. So I've revised this and I'm building this into a LiveCode project that would allow us to send a statement fairly quickly and get feedback from the LRS as to what statement has been received and to be able to explore it. And then I have another page that sort of takes the next step. Joan, you had to rejoin us. Are you able to hear? Hopefully you're back in okay. So this page will also be part of the app, and the idea is it's a skeleton to start with. I click pull data. One of the critical pieces I need to add are some feedback as it goes out to the LRS, but this is literally gathering all the statements that have been sent from the Makey project and that previous page I just showed you. So there should be one with our timestamp. Well, 28 February. One of the challenges is it's grouping them into started, interaction, completed, and selected. And because it's grouping them, it's actually doing a sort. So I would need to scroll down to the selected area to see those. I can do a find. And one of the things I can do by doing a find is validate that there's 220 selected statements that have been received. So here it is, Wednesday, 10 March. That statement that we just sent on the other page is entered into our log as the first item with selected under it. So if I scroll back up, we can see those summary counts. And the reason this is 220 instead of 220 or 219 is the title is also shown up in that count. So there's 219 down below, and there's another one, 220th entry here. You can see that there are, we can see right here on the screen, if I just highlight them, we have interacted right at the top, all 6 of them. So this page is summarizing and reporting data that is coming from my LRS account. And this sort of gets us into, okay, what does a query look like? What kind of data can we pull from that query? And at this point, I'm simply summarizing all the records that I'm getting back. But the other challenge would be, what did that one learner do? What did that one learner do within one course or one lesson? So we have to look at how do we work with the query and divide that information. So that's sort of where I'm at with this, what I'm calling LRP1. Actually, I should reverse these numbers because that was the first one I started, and LRP2. So this is, like I said, a repackage of some of the Team Makey statements, but I'm going to go ahead and build in some LiveCode interaction and have it working within a LiveCode project. It should be ready, I think, by our next meeting. So I'm going to stop sharing now. I've got another message that we're approaching the end of our current meeting time. So let me ask, are people wanting to continue? We think we're at a stopping point for this meeting. Let's just do a roundtable and see where things are. Peter, I show you up first.
If you've covered everything on your list for today, I think we got a couple of big chunks here of stuff.
Thank you. Andrew?
I agree. I think the sort of 3 demos that we looked at today make me feel confident. They seem very promising. All a little bit different, but all really kind of working together to kind of go towards a common goal. Selfishly, I won't be able to participate in the next leg of this if there is a third leg of the meeting today. So I will abstain from voting because I don't want to negatively impact anybody else.
And we understand that. We appreciate your time, and thanks for joining as you've been able to. Martin, how are you doing with things?
I'm fine. I got a chance to give a demo, so that was good for me. But I'm wondering what other people who haven't had a chance to speak, their input on things, like Helen and Joan and Kevin, Peter, I guess. Like, just wondering other people who might say, okay, they've got questions or they want to discuss what we've done some more, or that's all.
Let's go to Helen next. Helen, do you have any questions or comments about the meeting?
I thought the 3 demos were really helpful, and I'm beginning to see the different ways that, the API statements can be generated. And I'm just learning a lot. I wish I knew more to contribute, but I just think it really sounds like it's really moving forward. Great demos, great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Joan?
So Helen, except that I missed Brian's demo because my computer died, but I can watch the video to see how that works.
Okay.
And then this weekend I'll start drafting a little UI in LiveCode for the xAPI recorder / bookmarklet, and maybe even try to use, I think it was Andrew's statement where he posted a message, not to an LRS, but to a web server or API or something, I can't remember, from 2 weeks ago. And I might try that if I get the UI.
Okay. Anything else? I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
Oh, no, that's it. So that's my plan for this week.
Thank you. Kevin? Sorry, you're just last on the list. You got any feedback for the meeting or comments?
No, I mean, I was excited to see Martin doing the xAPI over there on Devlin's, and Joan said she might help me out if I can't get through this. I'm going to try tomorrow to see what it should work. I'm probably just doing a couple minor things. If not, I'll show you what I did, Joan. And I like the idea with Andrew had with checking out the PDFs and the different links. I learned a lot on that demonstration on LiveCode and how it's kind of set up. I was getting to see things with that. So it was really good.
Okay, good. Yeah, I appreciate Andrew and Martin both having demos. Did you have a comment, Martin?
Well, I was just going to say, whatever I get done, I will just post on Slack just as a file. Like, I'll zip up the stack in the file so then people can play with it.
Okay. So, yeah, if you and Andrew could do that, I'll share it in GitHub.
That's great.
We're down under a minute, so thank you all for joining. Once we wrap the meeting up, I'll go ahead and process the video and post it up tonight with an update for the team. There is one other thing. I have a doctor's appointment conflict tomorrow. I'm not going to make the live session. I was wondering if someone might be able to make a presentation in terms of just offering the update that we're going to publish to GitHub. I'm going to put my notes up there, and basically you'll just need to give them an update of what the team did, and then we walk through 3 demos. Is there anybody that would be willing to speak?
What time is that?
2 o'clock tomorrow, Eastern Standard.
I have a 1:30. Otherwise, I would commit to that.
Would anyone be comfortable speaking to the group?
I can do it if no one else wants to do it.
I don't see a lot of people jumping up, Martin, so we'd appreciate it. The other option, if it's really a concern, is just sharing the update on GitHub, and Jamie or Jesse will read it out for the group. But frankly, it makes the team look more dynamic if we actually have somebody from the team presenting. So we'd appreciate it, Martin.
I'll do it. I just don't want to jump up. I tend to jump up to things before everyone.
Okay.